Hello! Today's art lesson is all about Vincent Van Gogh and his famous sunflower paintings. So I hope you've watched the video I enclosed called Van Gogh and the Sunflowers, and you know a little something about the artist. Are you ready to start your very own drawing of a vase of sunflowers? These can be beautiful, big, bright, and colorful, and I can't wait to see them when you're finished. Let's go on with the video, and please follow along step by step with me, pausing your video whenever you need to so you can catch up. Use whatever materials you have at home to color yours in. I'm going to be using crayons, markers, and watercolor paints, but you can use whatever you like. This is Vincent Van Gogh. He is a famous artist who painted this picture of himself. It's called a self-portrait. He's also famous for painting many sunflowers. They were bright and colorful, and all the flowers are very different. We're going to be doing a sunflower picture today, just like Vincent Van Gogh. And we're going to make a vase and a table and lots of brightly colored sunflowers. You can use whatever materials you have at home, whether it be paint, oil pastels, crayons, markers, colored pencils, or chalk. Whatever you have, and we're going to make your sunflower picture a beautiful masterpiece, just like those of Vincent Van Gogh. You've been looking at some artwork done by students your age. Most of them are flat, but notice these at the end actually have a three-dimensional pop-out element where they used paper and cut it, twisted it, and glued it back on. So if you have supplies like that at home, scissors, glue, construction paper, you can be very creative with your sunflower picture. Okay, let me talk you through how I'm going to draw mine. I think you should probably hold your paper the tall vertical way and start in the middle of your paper with a circle that's at least as big as a quarter, if not a little bigger. And then I'm putting petals around the circle. Notice they're all a little bit big at the bottom and pointy at the top. And here I am putting another row of petals in between each one of my first ones. Just the pointy part is sticking out. That's one way to do it, but I won't do all my flowers that way. This time I'm making an oval instead of a circle, and that makes it look like the flower is turning sideways, and I'm seeing a bit of a side view of it. And I think this time I'll just put one row of petals around my center. Work your way up a little bit higher. Leave the bottom of the page empty because we're going to put a vase there or a container of some kind and a table. But the top half of your page should all be full of flowers. This time I made my petals longer and skinnier. Here's another oval one. And I'm just going to go around with petals. All right, look at your picture and decide if you have one more place that you could fit another flower. And it's okay if the petals are very close to the other flowers. You could even go behind a petal of a previous flower. So I made all of mine a little bit different so they will be interesting to look at. You can try to make them all the same too. Now I'm working on the flower vase or the flower pot. And I'm going to try to make it look like it's actually underneath some of the flowers. That way they're hanging over the edge. Oops, my head's getting in there. So you don't have to shape yours like I did, but this is the one I'm making, and you can try to look back at Vincent Van Gogh's vases and imitate one of those or come up with one of your own. Now every flower is going to need a stem leading from the flower into the vase. Sometimes those stems will need to go behind the petals that you've drawn. Lots of overlapping here. And then flowers also have leaves. So I'm going to try to draw some large shapes that can be colored in green, coming off the side of every stem, and filling in wherever there is some empty white space. This is a perfect place to end part one of our drawing of sunflowers, like Vincent Van Gogh. Come back next week and start the video right here with part two, where we will color them in and finish up our project. Have a great week. Since most of my sunflowers are going to be colored in with yellows and browns, oranges and greens, I'm going to choose a different color for my vase. I think I'll pick blue for the vase and purple for the table because those colors won't be also in the flowers. Because my vase or flower pot is three-dimensional and it's round, I'm going to try to do something where I change the value of my crayon. So the value is the darkness or the lightness of a color. And when you're using crayon, you can press darker near the edges and lighter in the middle, and that will give the illusion that your vase is actually bulging out at you or having a three-dimensional look. So I first outlined it in crayon. If you'd like to do that today, instead of always outlining with a black permanent marker or any black marker, you can outline in crayon by pressing harder. And now I'm going near my edges first, and I'm filling it in with a nice dark layer of blue, trying not to make it look scribbly or liney, but solid. And then as I work my way into the center of the vase, I'm letting up some pressure on that crayon. And the value is now getting lighter. So I actually have a dark, a medium, and a light value of blue. In the center, I think I'll even go a bit lighter. It becomes a little highlight where the light is reflecting onto the center and casting shadows on the edges. I think it might be fun to use a marker now. So I'm going to pull out a blue marker, and the whole top lip or the edge of my vase, I'm going to color it all in with a blue marker just to give it a different look and not have to use crayon everywhere. So very carefully, I'm tracing around each petal because the vase is behind the flowers. They're sort of hanging over the edge or the lip of the vase, and I don't want to color them blue. So I've got to be very careful to outline those first. You don't have to do this marker technique, but if you would like to try it, it makes a different value of blue. The next thing I think I'll do is color in the center of my sunflower with a brown marker. I'm going to do that to a couple of them, but I'm not going to make all of them brown. Sometimes I'll use orange or a mixture of orange and brown together. There's a nice bright orange one. There's another. Let's see if I have a different shade of brown. I'll use a brown crayon. That makes it a lighter brown. I'd like to create some variety, which means making all the flowers a little different instead of exactly alike. So that's why I'm going to change the center colors of some of my sunflowers. Here I'm mixing brown and orange together. So now I have different looks to them. I'm going to use a yellow crayon here and fill in the first row of petals with a yellow crayon, pushing nice and hard because yellow is a hard color to get bright unless you press pretty hard with the crayon. And now, for some variety, I'm going to use a yellow marker to fill in those petals that were behind. See how the yellow marker looks a little bit different than the yellow crayon? That helps it show up better if I don't use the same art medium. Just to speed things up a little bit, I'll put my video on fast forward and continue coloring in the petals and the stems and the leaves with those browns, oranges, yellows, and greens that I had showed you earlier. I'm going to try to use as many different yellow crayons and yellow markers as I can. Ooh, this time I'm going to mix a little orange and yellow together. I like that effect. You might want to try that in your picture too. Notice how the overlapping shows the stems behind the petals. I'm using purple for my table, and I'm going to use a crayon. Use a nice placemat underneath your art so that you don't get a mess on the table. You might call this a mixed media project because I'm going to use crayon, marker, and watercolor paint all for the same picture. You can try this too if you happen to have all of those things at home. If you don't, please just color it in with whatever you do have. But the watercolor paints are fun to use now as a background. I plan on using blues, greens, and purples, mostly blue and purple, to color in my background behind every petal. Be careful to paint with the tip of the brush. Don't press very hard on a paintbrush. Always stay in control by using the tip of the brush. Wet your watercolor paints and paint with the colored water. You're really not putting the paint on very thick. You're just coloring the water and then spreading that colored water into the areas where you want the wall to be. So I'm going to continue now filling in my whole picture. Well, I am finished with my masterpiece. I know I am no Vincent Van Gogh, but I can't wait to see how yours turned out. Take a picture of it and share it with me on our team. Remember, this is art class, so if you want to get super creative and cut out your flowers and glue them onto another paper or make 3D effects, go ahead, I'd love to see it.